Thank you, Hannah. I'm Beth Hendricks. I'm the Executive Director of the League of Voters of Colorado. Thank you all for being here. A few of my colleagues, well, you are all colleagues, but I would like to point out a few other staffers. Operations Manager Hannah Pogue.
Hi.
And our legislative liaison, Andrea Wilkins.
Hi, everyone.
And Maud Narol is our board member who's the co-director of Action and Advocacy. Maud, do you want to lead the introductions, or would you rather I did?
I'm happy to have you do it so that I don't go
I
coughing
wonder
all over
when
the
we all-
screen. But
Okay, great. Maud, let's just start with you.
as Beth said, I'm co-director for Action and Advocacy at the state level. So I'm one of the Action and Advocacy liaisons, active on the Legislative Action Committee, and a local member of Arapahoe Douglas. And one of the people, along with Neil and Gaithia in this group, who worked on the new election security position for Colorado League last year.
Great.
Last year.
Thanks. Yes, if you are associated with a league in Colorado, if you'll please let us know that. If you're not, welcome. Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Stark. I'm a Denver League of Women Voters, and I was part of the group that helped write the white paper on Colorado's election systems with Jerry, who's here as well.
Thanks. Neil.
Hi, Neil McBurnett in the Boulder League. And as Maud said, I had the privilege of working with the amazing team that included Maud and Gaithia and Karen and Barbara and lots of people that continue to be involved. I'm very grateful. I've been involved with election auditing and voting methods for several decades now, and a league member for about 20 years, I guess.
Great. Jeff.
I'm Jeff Withers, a new member of the Denver League, and I haven't done anything with the league yet. I've just joined a month or two ago, I guess.
Great. Well,
Welcome.
Christina.
I'm Christina Manthe. I'm the president of the Jeffco League. Jeffco has spent some time working on the special districts, trying to talk about what they are and what their effect is. So that's kind of my interest right there.
Jerry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jerry Cummins. As I mentioned before, I've been active on the white paper committee. I've been involved in voter service in the league at the state level for a good many years, 15 to 20 years, and past state president, and been rattling around in the league since the mid-70s. So glad to be here. Good to see everybody.
Thanks, Jerry. Shelley.
Hi, I'm Shelley Shaw, and I am probably about 2 weeks into the League of Women Voters. I'm a brand new member, and I'm down in Durango. I'm in the La Plata County chapter league. What do you say? I'm in the La Plata County group.
Great. Thanks. Betty.
Betty Seelan, the Jeffco League. I'm first VP in charge of program, and I've worked on our special district study of a couple of years ago, and I'm involved with our current interest groups in elections.
Brian.
I'm Brian Matisse. I'm an attorney at Berg Simpson, and I've also been a special district board member for the past 17 years now. And I've also been active with the Coloradans for Metro District Reform, and have worked with legislators on crafting special district legislation for about the past 15 years.
Great. Welcome. Thanks for being here, Brian. John.
Yes, good afternoon, John Henderson. I'm proud to say that my mother-in-law
lifelong member of the league in Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. area. Worked on the China issue when just before we recognized China. I inherited much of her public interest genes, I guess. I've been involved in civic and citizen issues for 50 years. And most recently, I've been working with Brian on the Coloradans for Metro District Reform. I lived in Solterra, there in Jeffco, and we were very active in implementing some reforms there. And the last 6 years or so, I've been an advocate, publishing over 100 blogs on Metro District issues, testifying in front of city councils, county commissioners, anybody and anyone who will listen, including at the state level. We found what we've been most successful at the local level with districts actually working with citizens in their transition. I'm working with 5 districts now. Brian has been doing the same work as well. So we're a resource and happy to help in any way we can, and look forward to working with you all.
Great, thank you, welcome. Gaithia.
Yes, I'm Gaithia Weiss. I'm in the Boulder County League, and as already said, I'm working with Neil and Maud and others on the election security issues, and I'm also active in the Legislative Action Committee.
Deetra.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Deetra Duncan, and I'm not really associated with any. I'm part of the league. I'm the Colorado Springs League. I participated in voter registration, candidate forum, and I am Fountain City Council at large.
Great, welcome. Jennifer. Jennifer? Okay, we'll wait.
She's muted.
Yep, we'll wait for Jennifer to come back. Jesse? No, how about, oh, there's Jesse.
Okay. Hi, Jesse Cuman. I'm not associated with the league.
Right.
I have been a member in the past. I have my own little group, Best Democracy, and I thought Celeste told me this would be a good group for me to listen in.
Great, welcome. Celeste.
Hi, everybody. I'm from Boulder County. I like all things elections. Happy to see so many people here, and looking forward to a good discussion. And I'm on LIC and voting methods team. And I lead the state alternative voting methods task force. And so some things come up in that group, and I suggest them to come here because it might be a more appropriate forum. So, and my mother and sister just arrived in town, so I'm frosting a birthday cake for my sister during the meeting.
Great, 'tis the season. Okay, lost Jennifer. Well, I think that our conversation today is going to center around special districts, although we are not limited to that topic. But where did we leave off at the last discussion?
We left off, I believe, at discussing whether we needed to bring in some speakers from possibly both sides to talk about the issue.
Okay. Ann Terry, who is the executive director of the Special Districts Association of Colorado, has agreed to speak with us on the 31st of January at 5:30 p.m. Please note that time. I saw somebody else mention noon, but it is at 5:30 p.m.
Can you repeat the name and the time?
Her name is Ann Terry, He's the Executive Director of Special Districts Association of Colorado, January 31st, via Zoom, 5:30.
Would you spell the name, please?
ANN Terry, TERRY.
Oh, just as I spelled it. Okay. Thank you.
I am assuming that Brian, you serve on her board, is that correct?
You're muted.
I'm sorry, I am let me clarify, the SDA is the board, it's basically a nonprofit organization that is in charge of members of all special districts. I'm a member of one of the, I'm on the board of directors of the Tollgate Crossing Metropolitan District, which is one of the members of the SDA. And I'm also an attorney that has represented other metro districts that are members of SDA, but I am not on the SDA board, which is a higher level board than the individual metro districts.
I see. Thank you for that. So who would, I am assuming I have not met Ann Terry in person. I have just communicated with her via email. I'm assuming she's pretty pro special districts. Who would be appropriate to serve on a panel with her? Or
And
is she?
I'll volunteer. I would be fine serving on a panel with her. I mean, let me clarify. I mean, I'm a member of special districts, and I do have I guess you would say, pro special districts done right kind of thing, but I believe there's been some abuses. So I'd be pleased to serve on a panel. And I think that another organization, MDEC, which is also pro special districts, may be willing to serve on that panel as well.
Great.
Contacted MDCE.
Don?
Yeah, I'd be happy to serve on that panel as well. I've served on similar panels in front of the city of Lakewood and in front of Longmont, and I know Ms. Terry and the chief lobbyist for the MDC organization, as well as several of the attorneys. So I'd be happy to participate as well.
So are all these proposed speakers, including the two of you are here, pro special districts? So that this would be focused on people who are in support of special districts, this on January 31st, is that correct?
I mean, let me clarify. My position is that there are, I guess if you talk about pro or con, I don't know if anyone is saying to be completely con special districts, because they're important. I mean, like fire.
Right,
districts and things like that.
exactly. I didn't mean it. Yes, you're right. I used the wrong word.
I guess I have been an advocate for about the last 17 years since I was elected to my special district board for citizen control, voter controlled special districts, as opposed to developer controlled special districts. So to the extent that you might say pro or con, I guess I would say that I tend to think that there are some significant changes that need to be made to make them responsive to the electors. So I guess most of the special district community might consider me con, because I'm not in favor of the current system as it is with some of the abuses in there.
Okay, thank you so much for explaining, Brian.
Can I just, I don't know when the right time is, but you know, we have so many contests on ballots already in Colorado. It's hard in my mind for citizens to find the time to get beyond 55. I mean, I wasn't even voting in special districts and I had 55 contests. So do citizens have time? We're the elections task force to devote mind share to something that is normally left to a city council or a county commission. I would hope that we have that perspective represented in any meeting that we have, actually. Just my 2 cents, not knowing very much at all.
Beth, you're muted.
Thanks, Neil. That's very interesting. Gathia.
I was just going to say that I don't remember John Henderson's specific testimony in Longmont, but we just had a big controversy about a developer controlled district, which we defeated. And I assume that he was part of that testimony in that direction, but I'm not positive. Is that true, John?
I'm not exactly sure the hearing is referencing, but I testified for about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours before the Longmont City Council on the question of whether or not they were going to continue to allow metro districts in residential development.
Right.
And following that that debate and that hearing, Ms. McGeady, one of the prominent industry attorneys, and I debated each other back and forth for about 2 hours in front of the Longmont City Council, and they decided to prohibit metro districts in residential developments. And following up on Brian's comments, we both worked together on the Coloradans for Metro District Reform, but I'll concede that I am an advocate against metro districts in residential development. They certainly serve a purpose in other areas, but with respect to new development of residential homes, I oppose them, and I don't see a role for them to play at all. And I can explain later if we get to that point.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to share a letter that I sent to the Longmont City Council with my strong opposition to that particular instance, which I felt tricked new homeowners thinking they were buying an inexpensive house, when in fact, by the time they did their monthly payments and you have that special tax added in, they were being blindsided. And that, in my opinion, also affects the quote, good special districts that they might need to vote a tax raise on later just because of general bitterness. That's my opinion, but and I can
Christina?
share that letter if any, I sent it to Maud and Neil. I can share what I had with others on the committee.
Neil, to answer your question, special districts are a reality of our life. There are 4,400 of them a little over 4,400 of them in Colorado right now. And there are something over 2,200 that are the metro districts themselves. The elections are in the spring, and it's more a matter of getting citizen involvement in them. They are a reality of our life, and to allow the developers to either appoint or continue to appoint or have vacant positions on these boards is a disservice to the community that they're supposed to be serving. We can't get away from them at this point, I wouldn't think, but we have to figure out how we're going to control them, might be the best word.
Okay, let's go to Maud, but then I would like to talk about how we structure this presentation and what its focus should be.
I was
Maud.
just going to, I was just going to say that Jennifer Patterson is back and even on screen. And so if we wanted an introduction from her, this would be a good time.
Sorry, I am on my cell phone, and cell phones don't operate in Zoom as efficiently as laptops do. But I'm Jennifer. I'm from Wisconsin. I just moved here, just joined the league, and I was very involved in elections, everything elections in Wisconsin. And so that's a kind of an interest and passion of mine. So thanks, Maud. Sorry.
And Jennifer, where do you live in Colorado?
I think I'm in Arapahoe County.
Okay.
That sounds odd.
No,
I'm-
I understand completely when you say, I think, I understand.
Yeah,
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 okay.
that's what I've been told
So
by
you're-
several people.
You're a member of that league,
Yes, Arapahoe Douglas.
Arapahoe, right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, welcome. It's gonna feel like
Thank you.
Wisconsin tomorrow here.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to, if we're ready to talk about how we should structure this presentation, or should we talk more just about special districts, what they are, why they matter as background for this group? Or are we beyond that?
I personally would love the background but I don't want to take up too much time if I'm the only one. That's Jennifer talking.
Okay, Shelley?
I agree. Just a slight background. So even though some of us may have very limited knowledge, some may have a lot of knowledge, so we at least all have common vocabulary, common understandings as we move into any decisions.
Great.
Good idea.
Who is willing to do that? I'm hoping Brian and John and then the DEFCO team can jump in as well.
Yeah, I'm fine discussing briefly special districts. Let me give you a little bit of a historical overview that I see with special districts that people may not be aware of. Special districts have been around for a long time. I mean, probably, I wouldn't say 100 years, but close to 100 years, certainly in the early 1900s. And originally, the idea behind them is that for unincorporated areas in the county, outside municipalities, outside towns and cities, originally they were intended to provide water, sewer, sanitation, fire protection, and the kinds of services that municipalities provide outside the boundaries of cities. And the purpose was, of course, you need fire protection, you need sewers, you need sanitation, et cetera. And you don't want unincorporated areas, to not have those services. Then what happened in the 1980s, that sort of changed. There was a modification of the statute to create the Title 32, which was a more formalized code for special districts that sort of combined a lot of the other items. And around that same time, Mission Viejo Corporation that organized the development of Mission Viejo, which is now a city, but used to be an unincorporated area of Orange County in California, moved out to Colorado and started developing Highlands Ranch. Highlands Ranch, if you don't know, is one of the largest unincorporated areas in the United States. It's about 100,000 people there, but it's not in any town or municipality. And they created Highlands Ranch, which is basically a metro district that looks like a city, but it's not. The developers then realized that with the success of that they could begin creating these metro districts, which are basically ways of financing development. And although it used to be in the unincorporated areas, now it can also be done in cities or towns with the permission of the city or the town board of trustees or city council. And so they become extremely popular in areas such as Aurora, in certain parts of Jefferson County, in areas in Colorado Springs where there's been a lot of growth recently. And unfortunately, what's been happening is developers want to keep control more or less forever to make sure that they can control the development. So there's been this tension in recent years between developers wanting to remain on the board. What they typically do is at the initial election, they will authorize, because they're the only ones that own the land, they will authorize incredible amounts of debt to basically circumvent Tabor. In some cases, there are some districts, such as in Aurora, that have over $100 billion of debt pre-authorized by the developer. Yeah, we're talking $100 billion of debt for communities that are going to be maybe no more than 10,000 people. They pre-authorize this debt to circumvent Tabor, and then what they do is they are allowed. These are government entities, and so therefore, that's one person, one vote. As long as you're a registered voter in Colorado and you either reside in the district or own property in the district, you are able to serve on the board. But there was an exception put into the Special District Act several years ago that allowed developers who otherwise would not qualify as eligible electors to be on the board if there were not sufficient interest in the residents. In other words, if there weren't enough residents to serve on the board that were otherwise qualified, they could qualify themselves through option contracts. And what they typically do is they qualify themselves through a 1% ownership in like a 10-foot by 10-foot piece of land or something like that, a developer parcel or a developer district. And then they're allowed to serve on that board indefinitely. when homeowners get into the community, obviously they're entitled to run, but for many years, there was very little way for homeowners to know that they could serve on the board. For example, it used to be that all they had to do was publish notice of elections on the Special District Association website that homeowners don't know about. And that would be enough once a year to give people constructive notice that they could run for elections and serve on these boards. There was a change in the statute about 3 years ago to provide for a little more transparency. Now they have to send out notices of elections once a year, but it's still very, very limited for homeowners to know about what these are. That it's typically a very large portion of their taxes. Usually in these metro districts, it's about 50 to 60 or sometimes 70 or 80 mills, which is even more than the school district to pay for that. And the other problem has been that in recent years, there's been another trend, which is instead of having one district per neighborhood, which it used to be, what they're doing now is they're creating multiple districts at once, like 10 or 20 districts at once. And all the districts start out as just basically a little postage stamp. And then they determine later what property is going to be in what district. So as soon as homeowners get elected to one district, what they'll do is they'll exclude the rest of their property, the developers, and move it to a different district. So that the homeowners wind up in a district that has basically nothing to do anymore, and yet a big tax burden on it. And all the other property of the developer has moved out of that district. And one other problem that they're doing now is they're creating intergovernmental agreements and authorities. For example, in Aurora, recently they've created what is called the Aerotropolis. I'm sorry, the Aurora Highlands Community Authority Board and the Aerotropolis Metro District. And the Aerotropolis Metro District is a 1 acre undeveloped parcel that the developers get 7 votes on the Community Authority Board. And the 5 other homeowner districts only get 1 vote. So the developers will always control this, and it'll have $100 billion of taxing authority. So it essentially defeats 1 person, 1 vote, and the ability, even if the homeowners get elected to the board, to ever be able to have a say in what's going on. So these are some of the concerns that are going on right now. And there's some proposed legislation to correct some of this.
Would anyone like to add anything? John?
Yeah, just to highlight a couple of points. Metro districts didn't always exist, as Brian said, and they started for a limited purpose. They have now morphed into the primary way that Coloradans, at least allegedly, finance the cost of infrastructure. Before metro districts and in most of the other parts of the country, you and I paid for infrastructure when we bought our home. The cost of the infrastructure was included, and still is in most parts of the country, included in the cost of the developed lot. Developer buys virgin land, rattlesnakes, gophers, and prairie dogs, and then adds value to that land by putting pipes in the ground, streets, infrastructure. The developer then takes the cost of the land added to the cost of the infrastructure and sells that lot to a home builder, adding profit. And that's how they make their money. And that's how they provide infrastructure. So that when you buy your home, when I bought my home in other parts of the country, I paid for the infrastructure when I bought the house because it was included in the price of the house. That number, according to the Special District Association, the chief lobbyist for the industry, and the Home Builders Association in Colorado, that number per lot is $30,000 to $40,000. That's how much it costs to put in the infrastructure in a development. What the Metro District laws say, and the current ones were adopted primarily in 1981, 1982, introduced by a developer from the Aspen area and his attorney. The new scheme, if you will, is you're not going to pay for the infrastructure through the cost of your home. You're going to pay for it later on in property taxes through Metro District financing. Theoretically, the developer doesn't charge you $30,000 to $40,000 per lot, or charge the home builder in the cost of the land that he sells to the home builder. Theoretically, that money is paid later in Metro District financing. When the residents arrive, they have bonds that have been issued by the developer to pay off loans that the developer made to the residents to pay for the infrastructure. So the residents, when they arrive, end up paying a loan and paying off the loan through a bond, and essentially paying interest on interest for amounts of money that have no check and balance. Nobody has provided any oversight in determining whether or not the developer has actually spent that money on what the money was supposed to be spent for. So before Metro Districts, you paid for the infrastructure when you bought your house. After Metro Districts, allegedly, you're paying for infrastructure through this financing scheme that is totally controlled by the developer. There's no oversight by the city, the county, or the state. The developer decides how much money you're going to pay him. The developer decides the interest rate that he's going to loan that money to you, and he's going to issue bonds, and sometimes issue bonds that he holds himself. To put a point on it, in Solterra, we did research, and we said, okay, let's start with a blank sheet of paper. How much money did the developer pay for the land? We had that number through court records. How much money did the developer spend to put pipes in the ground? We had that number through the city records and other documents. Coincidentally, it was $37,000 per lot, which fell within the range of 30 to 40. Then we figured out how much did each of us pay to the developer for the cost of the developed lot. We went through the county records, we found those numbers, and we subtracted from that number how much we paid. We subtracted the cost of the land, the cost of the infrastructure, and the number left over was $75 million in profit that we paid when we bought our houses. And that's before Metro District financing. I turned to the developer's attorney in a series of mediations the mayor structured to try to sidetrack or prevent our recall. In 3 mediations, 2 hours apiece, I sat next to the developer's attorney and I turned to her and I said, what did we spend? What did you spend the $29 million in bonds that you issued before we even got there, but we have to pay? What did you spend that money on? Because I'm thinking we already paid for the infrastructure. And her answer in a room full of people was, we're still trying to figure that out. And that's 11 years after they put in most of the infrastructure. So the point I'm making is the Metro Districts early on probably had a reason. Special districts certainly have a purpose. But the way it's been so contorted, and I'm an attorney, Brian's an attorney, and I think the worst offenders are not the developers, but their attorneys, because they keep coming up with these creative ways to keep residents off the boards. And Solterra, and I'll share one more example, and then I'll be silent. But in Solterra, They suppressed the public elections by telling people who wanted to serve on the board. For 11 years they did this. They told people, you can't serve on the board until it's built out. That's an HOA concept. That's not a government concept, and that's certainly not what Title 32 says. 32 says as soon as I move in, I can serve on the board. I can vote. But the developers went out of their way. When we were knocking on doors, getting signatures, people would say to me, and I collected over 250 signatures. People would say to me, well, we can't do this because they told us we can't serve on the board. And I'd show them a statute and I'd show them a piece of paper where they canceled our public elections every 2 years for 11 years, and then they'd sign. This is what we're dealing with. It's still going on. The industry says this is the exception. It's not the exception, folks. This is the rule. And they go to boot camp and think, sit around and think about ways to prevent residents from voting and serving on their boards. And Brian mentioned 2 ways they do it. It seems like every couple of years they come up with another scheme. And we just had an example in Jeffco that you all may be familiar with, where they were successful in persuading the commissioners to allow the developers to have 5 votes, the residents only 1, by creating districts, sub-districts that the developers were going to represent. And when we've pulled back the curtain, 3 of those districts will never have any people in them. They're retention basins. They're open land no houses will ever be built. So again, this is what we have been up against and we're advocating for, and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Gary.
Yes, I have, in addition to what you have described, do metro districts have any other sources of income from retail or any other source?
They can. They depends on what the city or town or county, if they're unincorporated, allows in the service plan. But in some areas, they can impose sales taxes. They can impose fees. They can impose lot fees when the homeowners first purchased a lot. Sometimes you'll see a $10,000 fee paid. So yes, they have other sources of revenue depending on the service plan.
Okay, thank you.
Christina?
A couple things. Brian was extremely kind when he said that they posted on their website. We found some where they had the required place to post was a fence post in the middle of the field at Bellevue and Kipling, which no longer is a fence post. The other thing is the financial oversight on existing any special district is poor at best. While they're supposed to have a state auditor audit periodically, they don't. And if you look at the local Department of Local Affairs, which oversees special districts in its entirety, they list when the last time there was an audit by anybody. And there are a number of them that have not had an audit in 20 years. So that is a point of there's no financial oversight. In addition, the Department of Local Affairs is the one that controls the elections and the special districts, not the SOS. And that makes a difference because they don't fall under the same rules that the SOS prescribes, unless the county clerk ends up running the election.
Athea.
I was just going to point out in terms of who votes when on what, the city of Longmont situation, we are a city, so it was our council who had to vote whether or not to accept this developer's proposal for a special district for what was then a vacant piece of land. And one of his enticements was that if he did that, then he would be willing to put in some special low-income housing, including a veterans complex, which I think is being built anyway now that he didn't get that. But at any rate, it's the people who already own houses who aren't going to pay any of these taxes that were able to decide, well, sure, this little part of Longmont this vacant hunk of land is going to pay a tax for something that the rest of us find desirable and as an enticement that the developer is trying to offer. So it's a very perverted situation in terms of democracy, because it's only the people who live in that district who then would be paying the cost of that extra special housing complex, and not the city as a whole. Sort of these future people can pay for it, not us.
Okay, we have a number of questions in the chat box that haven't yet been answered. I wonder if anyone here is able to answer them. Do we do audits of special district elections?
No, there's no, oh, and you may be referring to the league, so I apologize for that, but
Anyone is welcome to answer, always, please.
yeah, with respect to the state, county, city, there's no audit, if you will, of the elections. There really is virtually no oversight from anybody, any institutional body of any activity on special districts. Once the special district is created, and the previous speaker was correct, they're created by the city, a vote of the city council or the county board of commission. And once they are created, then the Title 32 provisions for who votes and who serves kick in. And basically it's the residents of the district. The reason there is so much control by the developer, of course, is they create these districts when there are no people there. And in my opinion, my theory, of course, is why they create these before any people arrive is very simple. It's that it's so they can control everything that happens within the district. Because if you think about it, there's no reason to create the district, which is there to generate money to pay back debts of the developer. There's no reason to create that district if there are no people with money to pay. So they create the districts, they issue the debt long before residents actually arrive. And when the residents arrive, then they are obligated to pay the debt. And just, a quick note, you know more about financing the purchase of a used car than you ever will in financing a home in a metro district, because there is virtually zero financial disclosure before you and I purchase a home in a metro district. I'm an attorney. It took me about 3 months to figure out what this was all about. I can now evaluate a district in about 2 hours. There are a handful of key documents. You have to go to different places to find them. You have to dig to find them sometimes, and that's deliberate. But once you do, you can present that information. But again, there's virtually no oversight.
Okay. I understand turnout rates are very low for the elections. Will you talk about that? Oh, Brian, I see your hand up too.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, when you talk about an audit of these elections, there was a local government election code that was adopted, I believe it was about 6 years ago by the state. And special districts have their own election code. It allows them to do one of two things. Either they can coordinate with the county, in which case it can be added to an election the county is going to conduct. But 99% of special district elections are run by designated election officials, which can be appointed by the particular special district. And it's usually the developer's attorney or the attorney for the special district that runs the election. And therefore there would be no audit. They would be the ones running the election. Now, with regard to the turnout being so low, the main problem is that I think that there's a lack of information. I mean, these are mail ballot elections, so they are mailed out just like just like in the case of Colorado regular elections. In my special district, we had a contest. We've been homeowner run now for 16 years since I got on the board back in 2006, and we've had we've had turnout. Last election, we had turnout of about 15% through the mail ballot elections, and it's mostly because people just don't know about the elections. And what's even more troubling is in most cases, people don't know they can self-nominate themselves. If they could self-nominate themselves very easily, just like they do in homeowner association type elections, there would be at least an election. In most cases, the elections aren't even held because there aren't enough people that know that they can run to be on the board.
Christina.
Yes. This is not a metro district, but it is a sample of special districts. The West Metro District on Fire District has about 200,000 people in it. And in the last election, 298 people voted. The other thing was that we know, I'll give you an example, going up Ward Road between the RTD tracks and Ralston Road, there are about 4 new metro districts. As I've calculated it, when they're not being charged tax on, when they finally get the tax on the home, the mill levy for the metro district is equivalent to what it is for the county school district, the water district that services that area. So those homeowners that paid about $500,000 for their house next year will have a $6,000 tax bill, if I've got the calculation right. Yes, it is a serious financial burden on them because they're this year they might get 3,000, maybe, not even that. And then next year it'll be around 6,000.
Maud?
Brian, you said the special district elections are mail ballot?
Yes.
But South Suburban Parks and Rec does not send out ballots. You have to request an absentee ballot or go to one of the rec centers to vote. And Jerry moderated a South Suburban election last spring, at which one of the board members running for re-election said that he was quite happy with very few people voting.
Sure. Do we have any idea how many special districts and metro districts use mail ballots?
South Metro Fire does.
But there are, what did you say, Christina, 4,400?
Approximately 4,400 special districts in total, 2,200 are metro districts. And I told this group what happened in my experience the last time I went to vote in one. I am in 3 metro districts, one of them being Highlands Ranch. And I requested mail-in ballots for 2 of them, decided to hand deliver them. I went to look for the place to deliver them to, which was an address in DTC, the DTC. And the street that I delivered it to, one side of the street's named one name and the other side of the street's named a different name. No number on the building. I finally parked my car and said, this has to be the building. I walked over the hill and down the hill, and at the bottom of the hill was a sign that said, vote here. I went in to drop my ballots off, and it was for 2 of the districts. And the ballot box was a cloth Samsonite suitcase with a slit cut in the top. And it was a law firm to which I delivered this to.
Yeah.
Okay. Betty.
I was just looking to go ahead a little bit. Is there any proposed legislation this year for, restrictions or regarding special districts or metro districts?
I know, I'm not sure of all the different legislation, but I know I've been contacted by one legislator, and there's going to be, this is going to be a little different. It's not going to be with regard to elections, but this is going to be regarding ethics. There's an independent ethics commission that unfortunately special districts have been excluded from its jurisdiction over the years. So they haven't been able to, the state hasn't been able to consider complaints about ethics violations by public officials on metro districts. And I know there's proposed legislation to expand the jurisdiction of the Independent Ethics Commission to include special districts. Obviously, I don't know, what the status is going to be, whether it's going to have a likelihood of passing or not.
Thank you. And regarding the reports, the special districts are required to file a report, I believe, with a Division of Local Affairs each year. And when we interviewed Casey Ty, Jeffco County Commissioner, 2 years ago, when we did our special district study, we asked about that report, and he said, yep, they get a report, and what do they do with it? They file it.
Yeah.
Because they have no authority to do anything about it anyway, or the personnel to handle it or anything. So that's what happens to those reports. They get filed.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I was just going to add, our organization, the Coloradans for Metro District Reform, last 2 years have helped write and promote legislation at the state level to implement some of the reforms. I think, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we first started, we had about 6 bills, potential bills, that addressed what we thought were the most egregious abuses. And I'll just sum up our 2 years of experiences that we have been bloodied and undercut by essentially the leadership of both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, in our efforts. Last year, Tammy Story was one of our champions, and I think she'll be introducing a bill, the ethics bill. She presented a very simple bill that had 2 provisions, one of which was to allow citizen initiatives in metro districts. You can have a citizen initiative in the city, in most counties, but they are not allowed in metro districts, which is really a severe handicap when you're trying to undo some of the ballot issues that the developers passed before the residents arrived. But at any rate, she promoted the bill, put the bill on, and she got 0 votes from her committee. The Democratic leadership undercut her. Her colleagues did not support her at all. And so we're fighting the campaign money issue. There's a tremendous amount of money that the industry has at their disposal because they're making a lot of money through our taxes, and they don't want to lose that money. And unfortunately, it's been more than an uphill battle. So we're going to continue our efforts again this year, but there's change that we need at all levels. Thank you.
Who was it that carried that bill?
Tammy
Story.
Tammy Story and Andy Basenecker was also one of our leaders, and they did a tremendous effort. In one of my blogs, I posted recorded statements that they made that not only helped tell our story, but also express their frustration. And just to put a point on it, we go to the committee meetings. I've testified for 2 years in front of the 3 or 4 committees each year. And we still have legislators sitting on the committees who say, well, I really don't understand it. Would somebody explain to me what a metro district is again?
Okay, we're running out of time here. So in the interest of time, that's exactly what I was about to ask for, Neil. John, are you willing to send, you said you had a half a dozen bills drafted. that you've tried to get introduced?
Yeah, we can go back to what we put together last year and the year before and be happy to send those to you.
Great. Okay, I just put my email, and cell phone in the chat. If you could send those things to me, I'll be sure they get out to the rest of the committee and post it on the elections task force web page, which I hope everybody knows about. I will get a link to that in the chat in just a second. Sue, I see your hand up.
Well, I just had one question, and that is the harm that is being done to homeowners. And are there people who are losing their homes, who are not able to stay in these homes that they thought they could afford? And then they find out about all these additional charges. And, you know, I think I'm trying to find some other things that will put some teeth into who's really getting hurt, not just who's making too much money, but who's really being harmed.
Both harmed and not heard, not represented.
Not represented.
Is yes, the double-edged sword there. Jerry, Maud, Andrea, anyone else, Betty, Sue, I'd love to hear your thoughts on where this fits in league positions. Of course, you know, citizens' right to know, voices being heard, things like that. But if you could think about that, I would appreciate it.
Beth, I'm wondering if we should also, you know, consider some coordination with the housing task force and the LAC members that are focused on affordable housing, because I know this is an issue that has been concerning to them too. It just seems like there's a lot of crossover here.
That makes a lot of sense, Andrea. Thank you for that.
Beth, we actually have a position on special districts.
Oh,
that
really?
said they should be minimized.
Awesome.
And it's efficient and economic. That is a state position.
Okay.
And we use several governmental positions, and we addressed Lakewood plan for how they should consider requests for new special districts. So we pulled up several positions, representativeness, those kind of things also.
Great. Yes, that's what I'm concerned about too, Betty, is yeah, representation. Neil.
I don't want to take away from this conversation, but I just put something in the chat and wanted to note that Gaethia and I are very interested in pursuing what we've talked about before in terms of improving audits in Colorado, and I think probably recounts also. So I don't know if there's a process for setting up a subcommittee and reporting back to the task force, but that's what we'd love to do.
Great. The process is someone says, hey, I'd like to form a subcommittee, and the group says, hey, that seems like a good idea. So great. Does everyone agree that metro and special districts are somewhat, or should be considered differently?
I agree.
Well, my point was that the elections in special districts in general seem to be an issue, as opposed to the governance questions and profit motives that are involved in metro districts.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about all of that. You all have been fabulous, and I'm astonished that I didn't know this before. So keep going.
Absolutely. I'm kind of thinking that maybe this group should get together again before the January 31st presentation to kind of just get a better handle on what the presentation should include. Is that just me, or do we have some?
I agree.
I think you're right.
Definitely.
Great. Maud?
If anybody else is interested, are there any objections to Neil and Gaethia forming a subcommittee on improving auditing and possibly recounts? If anyone is interested, Beth, they could send they could just send an email to info@Colorado and say they want to be in the special district subgroup. And Hannah, I'm hoping Hannah would then forward that info to Neil and Gaithia.
Yes, absolutely.
And then you two, if you need any support, like a Zoom link or something, let who know, Beth.
Really, any question can go to info@LWV Colorado. Between Hannah and I, we'll get it farmed out to the right people who need it.
You two are awesome.
Thanks. Well, you're amazing.
And Gaithia put her email in the chat as well. And so if we're going to meet again, our noon Wednesdays are good for folks.
If we stick on a bi-weekly schedule, that would be Wednesday the 4th at noon. Is that good?
Should be.
Great. Okay, let's plan on that. And we'll get a Zoom link out to everyone probably the day before that. But please plan on it.
And I would love to hear in the next meeting the difference between regular special districts and metro districts, because I am almost as ignorant as Jennifer new to Colorado Jennifer is.
Okay. Real quick before we wrap up, Andrea, did you want to report at all on 17-year-old voting progress? For those who don't know, 17-year-olds used to be able to vote in primaries if they would be 18 by the general election. That was taken away with Amendment 76. We're looking to get it back. Now to Andrea.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. And Celeste, if you're still on the call, feel free to chime in as well. But last week, I think it was, Celeste and I had a great conversation with Rep-elect Megan Lukens, who is a high school government teacher. And Celeste had reason to know that she might be interested in at least considering to sponsor a referred measure that would put a constitutional amendment on the 2024 ballot to basically correct the language around the requirements that voters must be 18, kind of that exclusionary language that we saw go into effect with Amendment 76. Rep-elect Lukens is, she's definitely interested, but she's also still in an information gathering phase. So we think that there's really some promise there, but certainly too soon for us to say that, we have any kind of commitment there. But we're also exploring the perspective of leadership on this. In particular, House leadership. That's kind of a question, and what their level of support would be for this, that we need to resolve before we can really realistically expect to proceed on this. We do know that Senate President Fenberg has voiced support in the past. We know the Secretary of State is supportive of almost 18-year-olds being able to vote in primary elections. And we're just pleased with the way things are headed. There's still a lot more conversations to be had and more outreach that we need to conduct. But I think we're in a really promising place. And if we can get a commitment from Rep-elect Lukens, I think she's a really fantastic person to be able to speak to the engagement and the abilities of young voters to, see this, see voting rights for younger voters get put back in place to see them re-enfranchised in Colorado. So that's kind of a quick update. Celeste, is there anything that you want to add to that?
I just wanted to say, so this would be we're asking her to carry a resolution to put a measure on the ballot to reverse the unintended consequences of Amendment 76. And the ballot language is very straightforward. And I don't know, I think Shelley, we reached out to you and some other La Plata people asking if you might be willing to reach out to your state reps or state senators to ask about this. I know Karen Sheik reached out to Mark Catlin, who's not willing to co-sponsor and is going to take a look at it. We need 2/3 of this House and 2/3 of the Senate to put it on the ballot. Or we need a whole lot of signatures, and we prefer to go the referendum route, so.
And is this in 2023 or 2024?
It would be in 2024, given the
Okay.
requirements in Colorado around the type of ballot measures that it can appear in odd years.
Okay.
But it can be placed on the ballot. The resolution can pass this year to put it on the ballot for next year. And if, 1 year is an election year and 1 year is not an election year, and there was politics, so I think we should try now to get it on the ballot.
Yeah.
Shelley, love to hear from you.
Yes, so looking at our rep is a Democrat. I know Rep-elect Lukens is also a Democrat. Looking at getting a Republican, the only one that would represent our area down here would be the senator, I think Cleve Simpson. I don't know if that would be helpful if I reached out and called and talked with him. I don't know what his stance would be or anything, but I can certainly at least open that conversation with him. But as far as representative, ours would be a Democrat as well, which is what Rep-elect Lukens is, and wouldn't be the opposite.
I think.
Yeah, I think anytime that, we can approach this from, a place of bipartisan sponsorship, all the better. We've put out some inquiries in the past and unfortunately haven't got really any traction from Republican legislators. And, I think unfortunately the issue has kind of taken on a little bit of a partisan feel. And, as we discussed last meeting, if you look at the party affiliation statistics that we were able to acquire from the Secretary of State's office, it's really not a partisan issue. So I think, if we could frame this as really just being about voter access and really wanting to support young people in early engagement in the political process with the idea that this is likely to foster lifelong engagement, I think that's the way that I think that's a very appropriate way to frame the issue. And, if, we can get a Republican interested in being a potential sponsor, that would be fantastic.
And Cleve Simpson is a really reasonable person. So hopefully that would work out. Thanks, Shelley.
We've gotten advice to get a Republican co-sponsor. And it's a totally political, because everybody wants a win. When a bill gets passed in committee, they say congratulations. And I feel like, why do they say congratulations? I feel like it's not, you should be happy when good bills are passed, and it shouldn't be a pat you on the back sort of thing. It should be a group effort. I don't like all that, but anyway, so yeah, we have been advised politically to get a Republican co-sponsor. Right now, the House has more than 2/3 Democratic membership, and the Senate is, I think, one shy of 2/3. So, and then the other thing is, once it gets on the ballot, the voters get to decide, and it's a very simple question. And it's not a sneaky question like last time. The question said, should only citizens be allowed to vote? It didn't say anything about 17-year-olds. And this one would be very clear. It's only letting people who are going to be 18 in the general election, like 1/3 of the states do already, let them vote in primaries. So we are shutting out the voice of our young people and letting 1/3 of the other states have that voice.
So
Did you say Lukens was a former high?
She's a former high school government teacher. I actually went to talk to her class once. She is in Steamboat Springs where she grew up. And but she was teaching in Boulder County, and her school was one of the schools that got 80% of their students to register to vote. So they won the Eliza Pickrell Route Award.
So I'm just wondering if there's an association of high school government teachers in the state that she could reach out to and get kids to write notes. And there are young Republicans there. I think when I was in high school, there were young Republicans groups as well as young Democrats groups, and see if there can be,
we might even have that. We might even have that list because we've worked with the Harvard professor's case study in democracy and recommended teachers to go to that program. So we may have a list. I'll reach out to Megan Lukens and ask her that question. She did mention a couple of groups like the Colorado Youth Advisory Council, which was involved in writing bills, cleanup bills for the state legislature over the middle, the break, over the, whatever you call the session when it's not in session. So interim session, thanks. So they are already interested in bills. So yes, totally. That's great.
And we are doing some outreach to them specifically. We actually talked to them about this last year as well. So the issue has been raised, but at the point that we spoke with them last year, and I'm talking about Koyak here, the point that it was raised last year, they had already identified their legislative priorities for the year. But since they have recently, along with the other interim committees, made their 2023 bill recommendations and are looking ahead to the next cycle. I think our timing is a little better this time around, so we are engaged in some outreach there. But yeah, it will be fantastic to identify additional groups where we can really demonstrate grassroots support for this. And for anyone that any of our league members that are doing outreach to their legislators, or if anyone is just, kind of interested, we do have a short fact sheet that might help sort of frame or guide the conversation. And we can share that as well.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. Maud?
Sorry, is the fact sheet on the elections task force page?
It is not, Maud. The vast majority of credit for this fantastic fact sheet goes to Celeste, and it was kind of a rush job. She and I were able to secure a call with a really quick turnaround with Megan Lukens, and it was just something that we quickly put together, and we have got a version that I believe is ready for public distribution. We may want to take a final look at that before we pass it on for others to use in a similar capacity, but it's not posted anywhere as of yet.
Okay, wonderful. And is there a way, Beth, to send info to the housing task force that this group is working on special districts, and especially those that have houses in them, and when their next meeting is? Fantastic. And I would like to thank the Jeffco folks who chimed in, and also Brian and John. And Brian and John, if you don't know, Beth, if you could tell them how many league members there are, and about what sort of response rate we get when we send out an action alert on a bill.
Okay, we have about 3,000 league members throughout the state in 19 leagues at the municipal, county, or regional level. Those 19 leagues serve in counties or regions that hold 90% of the state's population. So when we send out an action alert, depending on the topic, we have between 150 and 750 emails being sent. So it's not a bad response rate, for sure. Any other questions on this? I do have a couple more housekeeping items. Shelley.
Just real quickly, if I do get information from Cleve and he wants to reach out or can come to the January meeting, to whom shall I direct that to?
Why don't you just send everything to info@LWV Colorado? That will be the
Also,
clear-
the fact sheet, why don't you send him the fact sheet that we get to you? And then it has Andrea's contact and my contact information on it.
Right.
So that might be more directed.
Beth and Hannah, I can send that to you a little bit later this afternoon.
Excellent, thank you. Jesse.
A couple things. It was really informative presentation about the special districts. I had no idea about a lot of this. The protocol that I've been using to try to fix problems is the first thing you need to do is actually define the problem. And so I would suggest that all of the various problems that are component parts of this be listed so that you can somehow get your mind around what the scope of it is and exactly what the component parts are. So that would be something to start with, I would suggest. Celeste suggested that I listen in on this because I've been having a little bit of a problem with my representatives to try to pursue the idea that everybody should have ballot access for initiatives. So there are 64 counties in the state, and 60 of the 64 counties do not have ballot initiatives. They're in statutory counties. And I would say the vast majority of the people in the state are completely unaware of this. It's not on anybody's radar. I brought it up to Jared Polis when he was doing a presentation at the Boulder County Democratic Party headquarters this past summer. And he came out in favor of it. And he said, talk to my legislators. Well, you know, I tried talking to my legislators, and just last week there was a town hall with Steve Fenberg, Judy Amable, and Junie Joseph. And I put a question into the chat before the Zoom meeting, and twice during the Zoom meeting, they didn't answer the question. And then I started putting it into that was in the Q&A. And then toward the end, I started putting it into the chat. And after the second time I put it into the chat, Steve Fenberg gaslit me. And what he did was, he said, Jesse, I've already answered that question several times. You know, you've been asking this question for years. I've already answered it. And then he moved on and he didn't answer the question. He's like, you know, why are you asking me this question I've already answered? And then he doesn't answer it. The question is, are you in favor or are you against all 64 counties having ballot initiatives available to voters and for petition drives? So last I understood, 53 of the 64 counties are one-party counties. And that was from a study by Tom Cronin and Robert Levy at Colorado College in 2018. And no one's keeping data on this, that no one keeps track of pluralism. So you have all the counties have 3 to 5 county commissioners, except for the home rule counties. They're mostly one-party counties, and you really don't have much democracy if there's only one party. And so they're not keeping track of pluralism, and most people don't have access to ballots. There's no way to get something onto a ballot. You have to go through the county commissioners, and they've got the whole process tied down. So I just wanted to bring this up, maybe get it on your radar, that it's something that I think that the league might want to work on, is that it would be good to have ballot initiatives as a workaround to county commissions that aren't very democratic. And so I'm going to jump back a little bit to the special districts. This is something that's also part of that special district issue, is ballot access. And so you find these same issues across different districts or jurisdictions, where you have questions of transparency, accountability, ballot access, and fair representation. These are all kind of common themes. And if you look at the way we approach this, we basically only have 2 ways of remedying these problems. One is through the legislature and the legislative process, or we have to do it through a ballot initiative. And a lot of times we don't even have that venue of ballot initiatives. So I think that it's important to concentrate on that, obviously this isn't something I can do by myself. And I'm being gaslit by my state legislators. They're completely unaccountable. And I don't know how you hold these people accountable. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Thanks, Jesse. That's really interesting. I didn't know that about lack of citizen initiatives in so many of our counties.
60 of 64 do not have ballot initiatives. And I think if we want democracy, we have to be able to have direct democracy as a workaround to legislators that won't do the job.
Okay. Well, we will put that on the topic list for this group. Thank you for that. A couple other housekeeping items, unless anybody else has something for the good of the group. Okay, at the last meeting, we did touch briefly on the lawsuit against the Secretary of State's office by Perkins Coie Law Firm around the number of ballots that are thrown out due to signature verification issues. After discussing it at our last board meeting, we realized we didn't need to keep it quiet, that we were approached by Perkins Coie asking us to be a plaintiff in that lawsuit. And after much discussion, we declined. We felt that there were other ways to take care of that problem. So I'm telling you this just in the interest of transparency, because we did discuss it last week and didn't mention that the State League had been approached by the law firm as potential plaintiffs, which we declined. Also, I am meeting in about 45 minutes with a PR firm that is representing Major Garrett, the CBS Chief White House Correspondent, and David Becker, who is the founder and executive director of the Center for Election Innovation and Research. Major and David have written a book together that they are currently touring. The book is called The Big Truth: Upholding Democracy in the Age of the Big Lie. They will be doing a signing at the Tattered Cover Colfax on January 25th, and the Colorado State League will likely be holding a reception with the two authors before the book signing. So it will likely be a ticketed event, but just wanted to get that out there that we will be hosting some national authors. Any questions? Okay, I will have more details for you all at our meeting on the 4th. I will look forward to seeing you all then. I hope you stay warm and healthy and enjoy the last of the year, and happy New Year to all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presenters.
Yes,
Yes, really appreciate it, Brian and John.
yes, thank you.